guys. Thanks for your patience. Let's get on with the show, and we've got a great interlude here. Bit of artiness for you. The Mersey Sound is the name we're giving to this spot. It's also the name of a great poetry anthology published in 1967. 500,000 copies it sold and counting at the last count. That was Roger McGough, who's behind me here now. Yeah, let's hear it. Brian Patten, who's also behind me now. And the late Adrian Henry. Now then, obviously, Adrian can't be with us, but we do have Andy Roberts, who is a refugee from 1969. He was here with the Liverpool scene back in '69. So look, this should be great fun. And without further ado, because we've already had to nip back a bit of time with the technical issues we had recently, I give you the Mersey Sound.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm here representing an 18.5 stone poet. So I'm going to be doing a couple of Adrian's things, obviously without Adrian. It's hard to channel that voice, but there you go. I'm going to start with probably Adrian's signature poem. It's called Love Is. Love is feeling cold in the back of vans. Love is... Love is feeling cold in the back of vans. Love is a fan club with only 2 fans. Love is walking holding paint-stained hands. Love is... Love is fish and chips on a winter night. Love is blankets holding strange delight. Love is when you don't put out the light. Love is... Love is presents in the Christmas shops. Love is when you're feeling top of the pops. Love is what happens when the music stops. Love is... Love is white panties lying all forlorn. Love is a pink night dress still slightly warm. Love is when you have to leave at dawn. Love is... Love is you and love is me. Love is a prison and love is free. Love is what's there when you're away from me. Love is... Thank you. Okay, without further ado, I'd like to bring onto stage Roger McGough.
1, 2, 1, 2. There we are. Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon. Now, remember in the late 60s, poetry changed. Poetry really changed. What with the American Beats and the iconic Albert Hall poetry reading, remember? And a lot of people became hooked on poetry. And some people, well, became casualties of the addiction to poetry. And one such victim has volunteered bravely, I think, to shamble along to the tent this afternoon and discuss his problem. Would you welcome please Mr. Brian Patten. Brian. Brian, when did it all first begin?
Oh, at school.
At school?
Yeah.
As early as that?
Yeah.
We only ask, why?
Well, I saw some of the older boys doing it and it looked a bit of harmless fun.
A bit of harmless fun. What sort of things were you experimenting with in those early days?
Oh, well, pastiches and parodies and the little things, the pale imitations.
Oh, the pale imitations, yeah. Presumably they didn't really satisfy the craving that was developing.
No, I got into heavier stuff.
Like Alexandrines?
No, they used to make me vomit.
Oh, yeah. How about sonnets?
Sonnet, I was doing 14 lines a night.
14 lines a night?
Sometimes 15 lines a night.
As many. But Brian, didn't anyone see the danger you're doing to yourself and trying to help you break out of the habit?
Well, a few critics said I ought to stop doing it.
Yeah.
But by then I was hopelessly addicted, you know, and I...
what were we on to?
I was on to,
Alexandrians.
Alexandrians.
And horrible stuff like that.
Sonnets,
yeah. Well, but didn't anyone see the damage you were calling to yourself?
Yeah, a few critics, as I said, told me I ought to stop doing it. And I was sent on creative writing courses to try and help me dry up.
But didn't work.
No.
Do you ever consider a group therapy at all?
Yeah, I attend a self-help group regularly.
Oh yeah. What do you do at these sessions?
Well, we sort of sit in a circle and pass poems around.
Yeah, I know. You all sit in a circle and you pass poems around and you read them out and you discuss and all that sort of thing.
No, we just pass them around.
You just pass them around, yeah. But finally, Brian, as a self-confessed registered poet, how do you support your habit?
Ideal.
Brian, ideal. It's not ideal, is it? I mean, it's not certainly not
I
ideal.
didn't say ideal. I said ideal.
Oh, you deal. You mean you push? You're a dealer. Yeah. Finally, would you like to push a few?
Yeah.
So, there we go. Then.
I do. So,
Brian.
Yeah. Great. There's 3 poems which are basically about how I think children who are no good at passing exams are thrown on the waste tip these days, because teachers have no time to teach them because they're too busy helping people pass exams to go to universities, which then milk the kids for lots of money, and then those kids become, it goes on and on. Anyway, it's for all those kind of kids who don't pass exams. And this is called Child Daydreaming. When for the umpteenth time, the teacher shouted, "Stop that daydreaming, you're always daydreaming." The boy turned away from the window and, closing his eyes, dreamt into being in the centre of the classroom a big, deep, teacher-sized hole. And the teacher fell into it, and it swallowed him up, and down he fell, down and down, still shouting, "Stop that daydreaming," till he reached the bottom, where he sat like a frog crouched in the darkness. And the boy took pity on him, and he dreamt into being an angel that flew over that hole, dangling in its hand a ladder made of glass. And each opaque rung of that ladder glowed as the angel lowered it into the hole's darkness. It was a magic ladder, a ladder so fragile only daydreamers could climb it. Another one. Look, this is very much about kids who don't pass exams and are thrown on a scrap heap. It's called The Minister for Exams. When I was a child, I sat an exam. The test was simple. There were no ways I could fail it. Question number 1, describe the taste of the moon. It tastes like creation, I wrote. It has the flavour of starlight. Question number 2, what colour is love? Love is the colour of the water a man lost in the desert finds, I wrote. Question 3, why do snowflakes melt? I wrote, they melt because they fall onto the warm tongue of God. There were other questions. They were just as simple. I described the grief of Adam when he was expelled from Eden. I wrote down the exact weight of an elephant's dream. Yet today, many years later, for my living, I sweep the streets or clean out the toilets of the fat hotels. Why? Because constantly I failed my exams. Why? Well, let me set a test. Question number 1, how large is a child's imagination? Question number 2, how shallow is the soul of the Minister for Exams? Thank you. Just one more this time around. The first teacher was a really awful person, but my favourite teacher of all had a fantastic classroom. It was covered in maps, and every lesson would be, this is in the secondary school, and the posh people were up the road at a school called Quarry Bank, but ours was a very ordinary secondary modern. And this teacher always used to point to places on the map, or got us to point, and the lesson would be about that. And you couldn't do that anymore, but it inspired so many of us. He was a lovely man. Geography lesson, and it's a true story. Our teacher told us one day he would leave our school and sail across a warm blue sea to the places he had only known from maps and all his life had longed to be. The house he lived in was narrow and grey, but in his mind's eye he could see sweet-scented jasmine clinging to the walls and green leaves burning on an orange tree. He spoke of all the lands he longed to visit, where it was never drab or cold, and I couldn't understand why he'd never left our school and shook off its stranglehold. Then, halfway through his final term, he took ill, and he never returned. And he never got to that place on the map where the green leaves of the orange trees burned. The maps were pulled down from his classroom wall. His name was forgotten. It faded away. But a lesson he never knew he taught is with me to this day. I travelled to where the green leaves burn, to where the ocean's glass clear and blue, to all those places my teacher taught me to love, but which he never knew. Thank you.
Brian Patten. Allen Ginsberg wrote a poem. It's published. Oh, John Straws. Oh, it's fair now. Do it now. Well, do Allen Straws now?
It's on the list for now.
Right. Andy's going to do Allen Straws now. I'll come back to Allen Ginsberg. Sorry.
Scene stealer. Bloody hell. Once they get the bit between their teeth, you know, they're off. No, I wanted to do this song. I mean, the thing about our Liverpool scene was that it was, you know, it was a fruitful tree, and unfortunately fruit drop. And we lost Adrian, we also lost Brian Dodson, our first drummer. And 2-3 years ago we lost the wonderful Mike Hart, who was an early member. And I wanted to do one of Artie's songs. It's one that people don't really know, because it was only ever, I think it was on a compilation album and nothing else much. And it's a song called The Elsie Straws Saga. Can we lose a bit of the guitar in there? Elsie Straws had her first child at just 17, and a second at the age of 21. No husband, said the neighbors in disgust. She taught them how to live in perfect peace, magic roundabout to teach them loving ways. Awful, said the neighbors in disgust. Let's report her, said the loudest one. Let's do her, we'll do our best to see her kids, they get a proper life, a proper life. Elsie Straws taught them facts of life at 2 years old, left them naked when the sun made it right. Immoral, said the neighbors in disgust. Let's report her, said the loudest one. Let's do her, let's do our best to see her kids, they get a proper life, a proper life. So the mothers, they made complaints, told the welfare man. He took her children, put them in a home. said the neighbors in discussion. But those mothers forgot their children's minds youngly clear. All their kiddies went to live with Elsie Straws. Nothing, said the neighbors in distress. Thank you. Now, Rog.
Yeah, as I was saying, Allen Ginsberg, remember Allen Ginsberg, great poet, and he wrote this poem published in 1995 called The Ballad of the American Skeletons. Don't know if you know it, and set to music by Paul McCartney and Philip Glass. And I've taken that version, which is very much America and of its time, and reset it. And this is the Ginsberg skeleton. Said the FIFA skeleton, hide the whistle and line our pockets. Said the arms dealer skeleton, sell them mortars, tanks and rockets. Said the dope dealer skeleton, I can't cope with the demand. Said the false prophet skeleton, it is written in the sand. Said the tobacco skeleton, there's a billion lungs to fill. Said the ISIS skeleton, that's what we do, we kill. Said the whip-cracking skeleton, love that lip-smacking blood. Said the beheading skeleton, it's just like chopping wood. Said the far-right skeleton, we must keep them at the borders. Said the tear gas skeleton, I'm just obeying orders. Said the people smuggler skeleton, I brought freedom within reach. Said the washed up skeleton, they found me on the beach. Said the Ebola skeleton, sorry I'm not finished yet. Said the World Bank skeleton, you can breathe when you've paid your debt. Said the NRA skeleton, it's a basic human right. Said the bullet riddled skeleton, yup, damn right. Said the schoolgirl skeleton, I wish we'd never met. Said the grooming skeleton, what you see ain't what you get. Said the self-harming skeleton, the blade cuts out the ache in me. Said the Jesus skeleton, why hast thou forsaken me? Said the payday skeleton, keep on taking out the loans. Said the skeleton of colour, am I the token bones? Said the Harley Street skeleton, you could never afford my fee. Said the lying in state skeleton, what you see is what you'll be. Said the skeleton in the cupboard, who locked me up in here? Said the Brexit skeleton, seemed a good idea. Said the plagiarised skeleton, I'll call the poetry police. Said the Ginsberg skeleton, now let me rest in peace. Said the Ginsberg skeleton, now let me rest in peace. This is Survivor. Every day I think about Brexit, about global warming, about pollution, disease, starvation, violence, terrorism, war, the end of the world. It helps keep my mind off things. But the environment is very important, isn't it? Don't you think? And I'm very concerned about it. And recycling, I think recycling is so important. So I've written a poem called Recycling. I care about the environment and try to do what is right. So I cycle to work every morning and recycle home every night. Bye-bye. Now, I used to be in a band many, many years ago called The Scaffold. Is anyone old enough to remember The Scaffold? Okay. There are some younger members in the audience who actually don't remember The Scaffold. Imagine that. Don't remember, too young to remember The Scaffold. Now, we were sort of, hard to describe really, we're sort of a cross between Led Zeppelin and the Spice Girls. That's only better, sort of thing. But one of the things about being in a band and not being a musician was that you met a lot of other great musicians and who, I was never a rival. We're in bands, but we were never rivals. We did our own thing, and often they came to us for advice on things like their personal life and that sort of stuff. And I was lucky enough to help